thanks to both of our Oneonta Town Highway Superintendent candidates for participating tonight. Now we're going to move on to our debate for the 24th Congressional District of New York. Before we start, I want to say a few words about the structure of tonight's debate. The candidates will be fielding questions from three sources: our live audience, the television audience at home, and our media panel, which includes Sam Pollock, the editor of the Daily Star, and Gary Wickham of SUNY Radio WUOW. As our candidates get seated, we have Michael Arcuri and Richard Hanna. Thank you, Mr. Arcuri and Mr. Hanna, for being able to be here tonight and providing our community with this opportunity to get to know you and your positions better. So, if you are in this live audience and you have a question that you'd like me to ask of the candidates, please write it down and give it to one of the volunteers. I'll ask our league volunteers who are in the room who can take questions. Please raise your hands. There's, I think, few people in the back, so if you can flag one of these folks down if you want to submit a question. And if you're watching at home or online, you may also submit a question by calling in at 436-2106. For those submitting questions, we ask that you direct your question towards policy issues, not personal issues. And please phrase your question so that it's directed at both candidates, as both will be asked to answer all the questions. League volunteers will be reviewing the questions and may consolidate similar questions into one so that we'll be able to touch on as many concerns as possible in the time that we have this evening. Debate will begin with a 2-minute opening statement by each candidate, after which the candidates will each have 40 minutes of cumulative time to answer questions. Cumulative time format means that the candidates can take as much time as they want to answer any particular question, but they should keep their eye on the timer who are seated in front of them so they don't run out of time. Moreover, the cumulative time format will allow candidates to respond to one another. So, candidates, you'll be welcome to respond to your opponent's answer or provide further details about your position. And after the question time is over, candidates will each have up to 2 minutes to deliver a closing statement. And I do ask the audience here to please refrain from applauding until the session is completed, not in between while they're answering questions. We flipped a coin prior to the start of this debate to determine who would go first, the opening statements, and first off, we have Mr. Hanna.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm grateful. It was a full crowd. It's nice to see. And thank you to the League of Women Voters, and thank you to the college. I'm grateful. By way of biographical background, I was a resident of Otsego County for over 10 years. I owned a small business here. I served on your IDA board locally for 3 years, and now I reside in Barneville, just north of Utica. I'm a businessman. My family, my father died when I was 20. I helped raise my mom and 4 sisters, started a small business from nothing. And in the 30 years since I started, I've had over 450 employees. I've been involved in lots of not-for-profit pursuits, and I get it. I know what's wrong in upstate New York. I built my life here. When I came here from college 30 years ago, it was a place with opportunity, a place that I knew I could grow a business, have a family, build a home, and build a life. And it isn't like that anymore. I do not remember a new year somehow that was better than the year before it. What I've seen in upstate New York is a continued decline of our economy. I've seen 1.5 million people. We all know that this is the first time in 70 years that income for New Yorkers is down. Poverty's never been higher since 1994. And I also want you to know that I'm familiar with women's issues. I've been named a Hero of Women by our local YWCA in Utica. I started a fund for women and girls called Annie's Fund that's had over 150 recipients, that is alive and well today and run by 13 different not-for-profits. So I'm a person who's doing this because I want to see growth and opportunity and prosperity brought back to the community that I love, back to upstate New York. And I never imagined myself doing this, but here I am, and here I am again. So thank you.
Thank you, Richard, and the League and all of the viewers for tuning in tonight. really about three traits that I think are most important. I think those three traits are listening to your constituents, standing up for them, and fighting for them. And I've tried to do that over the past 4 years. You know, I've listened when the city of Oneonta was not getting the funding that they were supposed to after the flood from FEMA. And we fought hard to make sure that that funding came in because it was absolutely critical to the city of Oneonta. I listened, and I knew how bad the Nairi power line would be. And we stood up and we fought, and we stopped the Nairi power line that would have been a blight, not just to Otsego County, but to Shenango County and Broome County and Oneida County as well. That's coming together and working with coalitions to make sure that we stop that. Those are the kind of things that I think are critically important. And I listened when the county, and I sat down with the members of the county elected officials, and I said, what is the most important problem? What do you think is absolutely critical here in Otsego County? And they said, our ability to communicate from a 911 perspective, our law enforcement. And we worked very hard in a very tough economy. We were able to bring back $400,000 to help the Sheriff's Department and the 911 Center to coordinate it. These are the kind of things that I think are absolutely critical for a community. Broadband. Broadband is probably one of the most important issues that we face in rural upstate New York, and we've been fighting hard, working with Otsego Power to bring broadband here. That is what I think a representative needs to do for his community. He needs to listen, he needs to stand up, and not be afraid to fight back. And we certainly have done that with respect to hydraulic fracking, fighting and making sure that people know that that is not what it's cracked up to be, and that it is definitely a blight on our land. So we'll continue to fight and continue to work in that regard.
Thank you. And thank you both. Now we're going to move on to our questions. Each candidate will have a total of 40 minutes to respond, discuss their positions. We also flipped a coin for this. Mr. Arcuri will be going first to answer the first question. And that first question is going to come from our media panel. How about Sam Pollock from the Daily Star? You got a question?
Gentlemen, anyone who's turned on the television set the 24th District over the last several weeks has been subjected to a seemingly unending series of misleading negative advertising. Mr. Hanna, you and your committee have warped Mr. Arcuri's voting record on his fealty to Ms. Pelosi and on his health care vote. Mr. Arcuri, if anything, your ads have been even more sinister in terms of your personal attacks on Mr. Hanna, implying that he has been the beneficiary of nepotism and has earned his fortune by cheating the taxpayers. My question, even acknowledging that politics is often a contact sport, aren't you both at least a little bit ashamed of yourselves? And if not, why not?
Well, let me say this. Last year, 2 years ago, during the election, I didn't run a negative ad. I had a 22-point lead about 6 weeks in. Negative ads were run against me, and that 22-point lead dwindled to 4 points. I didn't start running negative ads this year until Mr. Hanna started running them. I would have preferred not to run them, and actually, I think the fact that negative ads are run, I think detracts from the campaign. But I think when all is said and done, they net out to zero. And at that point, and if one side is doing them, it is absolutely necessary. I know people say that they don't have an effect, but they do have an effect. We saw it. And I think they net out to zero, and I think that's the point that we're at. And at that point, I think people start to listen to the candidates and what the candidates stand for. And I think that is the point that we are at now.
I disagree.